Hey! Yo, everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. It's been a while, right? And this video probably should have been out sooner. I'm not going to go into detail on why it has been so sporadic with me putting videos up. I think I've talked about that enough. Maybe I'll take some more time later to go into detail about that. But, I mean, literally, as you can see, I've been busy. Been packing up the Batman figures. Although Mr. Red Hood is still chilling out here. Pretty recent figure. But, yeah, my wife and I, as well as my kids, are looking to move out of our place that we're living at right now, the house we're living at. And we came this close to buying a new house. Hence why I'm packing everything up. However, after the inspection, we decided to back out, so still in the hunt, right? We just figured the house wasn't for us. We I don't know if it was cold feet or reservations or whatever the case may be. So, but we're not talking about house hunting or anything like that. We're talking some video reviews. And on my Twitter, a couple weeks ago, I posted up a poll asking you guys what things you would like me to talk about on my first real video back after my long sabbatical. And the choices were Tom King's run on Batman. Trust me, we'll get to that eventually. Doomsday Clock. Wow. Doomsday Clock. Wow. That would be a great comic. Doomsday Clock. Doomsday Clock and its repercussions on the DC timeline. The new Jean-Luc Picard, Star Trek Picard series. As you guys know, I'm a big Trek fan. And then finally, The Witcher. Toss a coin to The Witcher. Yes, and you guys actually picked The Witcher, which was the one I didn't think you guys were going to pick. I thought you guys were going to be all on top of that sweet Tom King Batman run, so you get my opinions on it. But nope, you guys want to talk Witcher, and you know what? I'm okay with that. So let's talk about the Witcher TV show that came out just a few months ago, and whether or not I like it. Now, my experiences into the Witcher fandom is a relatively new one. I just became a fan of this product, I guess, within the past, I want to say 3 or 4 months. However, unlike a lot of people, or I want to say modern fans is probably not the right word, but fans who have just recently jumped on board in the past maybe 10 or so years, the video games weren't my entry point. No. When I found out Henry Cavill, Superman himself, was going to go out there and become the White Wolf, the real White Wolf, no, not you, Jon Snow, but the real White Wolf, the Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, I was like, this looks like it's going to be cool. So, of course, I said, well, what's the source material, right? Is it the video game? Is that where all this is coming from? Is it comics? Is it something else? And no, it's actually books. So, I decided, well, if I'm going to get into this TV show, I might as well get into the source material itself. And I decided to go and start reading the books. Although reading's a little bit of a exaggeration. I use Audible. I live and die by that because I have like an hour's ride to work and back. So, in addition to whenever I get to go to the gym, I'll be listening to the Audibles, just getting the curls on, getting the swell on, getting that pump going. And I've been really reading up on a lot of stuff. I just went through all the old Tolkien stuff again. I've done some political books as well as some mystery stuff. Just finished The Escapist by Brad Meltzer. So, of course, now I'm on to the Witcher series. And the Witcher series, there are 8 books, of which I'm currently on book 5, which is Baptism by Fire. I am about a third of the way through it, so still a lot to go. But on a whole, and this isn't a TV show, just talking about the books, I thoroughly enjoy the Witcher's books. I think what's great about the Witcher books is that there's the way that the storytelling is being done, like the pacing of each story, the characters are fun or interesting, and the world that they build is a very gray world, right? There's good and there's evil and there's monsters and stuff like that, but no one's entirely 100% good and no one's entirely 100% evil. And I think that's something that's compelling for the book series. So by the time the TV show came out, I had completed book 2 and I was on to book 3. So why is that important that I bring that up? Well, from my experience with the product of The Witcher, going into the TV show, having the first 2 books under my belt was actually really probably the best idea I could have had, because the first season of The Witcher is based off the first 2 books, roughly, right? 70% of The Witcher's stories from the books go into the TV show. There are, of course, changes, mind you, and I'm not going to go into every little detail. You can go in your screen rants or your watch modos or your what cultures, and you can get your 5 details that were changed between the books and the movies or the TV show. You can go on that, right? No, I'm not going to spend time on that. But rather, I'm going to talk about the things that I liked, the things I didn't like, and just give you guys an overall opinion, because I'm not going to go in detail about the overarching story. But for those of you that don't know what The Witcher is, The Witcher is a book series, later a video game series, and now a TV show, which is based off the character Geralt of Rivia, the Witcher himself. A Witcher, in this world that is created, which really doesn't have a name, right? But in the Witcher world, a Witcher is basically a monster hunter. They are individuals who are usually taken in early in their youth, shortly after birth, probably around the age of 3 or 4, go through various different trainings and are mutated into a subhuman aspect, right? They're basically mutants, right? So Geralt, the main character of the book series, he doesn't feel pain to the degree that we do, right? He has a high pain threshold. He's immune to certain poisons. He's immune to certain, like, magical effects. He can cast magic, although, mind you, I mean, D&D terms is like the equivalent of doing a level 3 spells. But he can still cast certain magical spells. And he's just overall... He also... You know, the thing is witches don't have emotion. It's more or less they're numb to emotion. Or, in Geralt's case, he's kind of, I don't know, uneducated on how to work emotion. It's confusing. But witches are basically demon hunters. They're slayers of monsters. For a price, of course. And they go by a certain code and conduct. Specifically, Geralt. And Geralt has a code of conduct of doing right and you know, always taking out the monster and protecting the helpless. But he also has a code of neutrality. He doesn't believe in getting into big world politics, right? So if you have the Nilfgaardian Empire, which is darkly evil, which we can talk about that later, going up against Centra, he will not participate in the battle. Even if he believes that Centra is a wholly good place and Nilfgaard is an evil place, he won't participate in the battle because he is staying neutral. And the TV show follows 3 characters, which are basically 3 characters from the book, right? You have Geralt, who is played by AndrewCutter, and mind you, he's the only actor I remember the names to, so sorry. You have Yennefer, which is a sorceress and an on-again, off-again love interest for Geralt. And then finally, Ciri, who is the child of surprise that is destined to Geralt. And I can explain that in a little bit. But basically, these 3 characters' stories are told over the span of 100 years in the TV show. And at present day is Ciri's story. Maybe 10, 15 years earlier is Geralt's story. And then maybe 90 years before that is Yennefer's story. And they eventually all collide together, for the most part, right? Which is similar into the books. Although the books have the stories ordered different, like the first story for the TV show is the lesser evil, which is actually like the 3rd or 4th story in the first novel. But details, who cares, right? We're not talking about that stuff. And that's the basic gist, right? Geralt is going around and he's doing his demon slaying and his monster killing, and it's very much of a Monster of a Week TV show, right? He goes out there, he fights the monster, and then there's an overarching story that kind of collides all together. But that's kind of an interesting thing about the show is it's not this long-form story that we get from Netflix. It is literally a Monster of the Week. In saying that, right, let's explain some of the characters a little bit more. We already talked about Geralt. Yennefer is a sorceress who has a very unique and complex driving force in her story arc, right? She's older than she looks. She's probably like 100 and something years old, but she uses magic to keep herself youthful. But because of all the stuff that she's done to keep herself youthful, she no longer has the ability to have children. And Yennefer wants to have that ability. Doesn't necessarily mean she wants to have children, although I think underliningly she does. I think it's more or less, Yennefer wants everything and the ability to do everything. And when she doesn't have that ability to do everything, it bothers her. She and Geralt are bonded together based off of one of the stories in the books. In one of the stories, I think it's episode 4 in the TV show. And basically a wish is made which binds their destinies and their paths together, right? And then you have Ciri. Ciri is a princess of Centra who has to go on the run, and she is destined to find and to be with Geralt. Not in a sexual way or in a lover's way, but Geralt basically, and is a convoluted but really kind of cool prospect, invoked the law of surprise on Ciri's parents, and basically it says, whatever you don't know that you have, but find out that you have, I get. And they find out that they have a kid, so she's destined to be with him. And in the books later, he kind of adopts her as a pseudo daughter figure. But again, I don't want to go into too much detail on spoilers, right? And I don't want to make this video too long. So let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should watch this, right? And the stuff I like and the stuff I don't like. Stuff I like. The characters. All the acting in this is really good. And in very surprising ways. I have to give props to the actress who played Yennefer, because she did a really good job. Although I don't think she looks like Yennefer, the Yennefer from my mind's eye from the books, particularly with how they portray the hair. She does a really good job with that character, specifically with Yennefer's backstory, which I'll talk about in a moment. But Henry Cavill as Geralt, boy, did they pick a spot-on actor, and he championed to get this part. Boy, does he do a perfect job of it. Geralt isn't a super charismatic individual. Geralt is a bit of a rock in the mud, a stub, but one with charm, right? So the subtleties that are done with acting, right? Like the head twitches or the eyebrow raises or the various different other stuff. Somewhat to be akin to Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Spock, right? It's those subtle things that tell a story for the character. And that happens with Henry doing Geralt. And he does a fantastic job. So all the acting in it is really well done. And like I said, Yennefer's story is probably the most compelling story. They take a lot of the backstory that is assumed in the books and make it canon for the TV show. Like, we never know Yennefer's backstory truly in the books. We know she went to a college for sorceresses, and that some magic was used to make herself youthful, and that's about it, right? And because of that magic, she can't have children. But we don't know the detail of how that magic affected her, or at least I don't know yet. I mean, maybe they reveal it later books, but in the books, there's an offhanded comment by Geralt in his mind, narrating, basically saying, like, I bet Yennefer, with all the magic she's using, was a hunchback and was ridiculed and used magic to ultimately make herself, more beautiful and youthful and all that. And then they took that comment and they actually added it to the character. So we get a good, like, four episodes of Yennefer being a hunchback who's has a deformity and is struggling and is disliked by her family and disliked by her father and sold by her father to a sorceress. So I think them taking that stuff and actually expanding on it was really well done. I think they did a good job at interpreting a lot of stories. I mentioned before, one of my favorite stories from the book is from the last story, The Last Wish, which is the first book, is The Lesser of Evils, which two characters are introduced, Dragobon, a wizard, and Rimfi, a princess kind of, / bandit leader, and her hunting him down and trying to get him to exact her revenge. I don't want to spoil too much, but it was the first episode, and boy, does it hook you really hard. One of my favorite stories, which is just The Witcher, which he deals with a princess that's turned into a strigger, which is a monster. They did a really good job with that one. So a lot of great interpretations, right? And even the minor characters like Dandelion, who is not called Dandelion in this, but it's the bard friend of Geralt. This actor does a really good job on it. So the actors and actresses do a really good job with the storytelling. And a lot of production is put into this, and it shows. It's a beautiful, gorgeous-looking show. And the fight scenes are great. Renfrey versus Geralt is a fantastic fight. It's beautifully done. And what I also like about the show, too, is that I would have to say, if you took the first 2 books of The Witcher and you compare them to the TV show, I would say 80% of the books are translated faithfully into the TV show. There is, of course, some liberties taken. I always use kind of Harry Potter as a litmus test on adaptations of books to movies or TV shows, because it's always so tough. But Harry Potter did it really well. I mean, the 4th movie and the 4th book was kind of bastardized a bit, and there were a bit changes in the 7th movie to the 7th book. But for the most part, Harry Potter did a really good job at interpreting that story onto movies. And I would say that The Witcher does just as good of a job. Bad! So the stories are told in, and this didn't bother me that much, but I do think it's something that irked me a little bit. The stories are told in 3 different timelines, right? Ciri's story is told in the present day. Geralt's story, for the most part, is told in the past, 15 years earlier, right? Eventually his story catches up to her. And then Yennefer's story is told all the way down here at year 9, like 90 years ago, and eventually moves her way up to Geralt and Ciri. And you must excuse my kitty, my Deathstroke the Terminator cat. She's all over the place today. But anyways, right? I think the way you're never told that they're in different timelines. So in one episode, spoiler alert, Centra is destroyed, and the next episode is completely fine. Right? It's because there's 2 different parts of the story. So I think they could have done that better. Like I said, there's a few aesthetic changes that I didn't care for. And the actress that plays Yennefer, who is a beautiful actress and a really fucking fantastic actress, doesn't look like Yennefer to me. Right? Yennefer has, her hair was very tight and very, pulled back and always in kind of a part down the center, where Yennefer, to me, kind of looks like the video game version. Very flowy hair, kind of bristles down. It doesn't, just small things. Again, she did a really good job with the character. Just, there's a few aesthetic changes that I didn't really care for. Triss, they completely changed her. Triss is supposed to have vibrant red hair, and they changed the actress. It doesn't bother me much because Triss isn't that big of a character, but it's just a few minor changes that didn't coincide with what the book's interpretations were. So that was a little throwing off. And number 3 is, in the world of The Witcher, there is gray area for everything. So, like, Nilfgaard in the books is not as evil as they are in the show. In the show, they're painted as the fucking Empire from Star Wars, right? Just, irredeemable evil people. But in the books, they're plotting war against other countries, and yeah, they do really shady bad stuff, but they're also more accepting of other races, right? The Elven and Dwarven races are cooler with the Nilfgaards because they're not as prejudiced, they're not as racist. So yes, there's evil there, but there's gray too, which there's at least because in the other kingdoms, right, the other northern kingdoms, the ones that we consider the good guys in the TV show, they're very prejudiced against elves and dwarves and treats them like shit. So it's interesting how they kind of took away that gray area, right? In saying that, I thoroughly enjoyed The Witcher. It is a flawed show. Don't get me wrong. Pacing and structure of the story. I like the Monster of the Week, so don't get me wrong on that one, but I think how the stories intertwine with each other could have been better. It's a flawed series, but it's such a good series. I really thoroughly enjoy it. And if you want to get into something new, if you want to wet that whistle for your fantasy, medieval, Renaissance kind of, I don't know. If you're missing Game of Thrones and you want something to kind of inject in there, Witcher is a great choice. And you don't need to read the books or play the video games to enjoy it. You can just jump right in. I think it does a very good job on that. It can be very graphic sometimes, with the violence and nudity and stuff like that. But it never tries to be anything that it isn't. And that's a fun ride. Right? And that's all we could want from TV shows. So, I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to try to put up some more videos soon. I got some topics I want to talk about. Some news came out for DC Comics. Mr. Dan DiDio has been thrown out of DC Comics, so that's something to talk about. As well as I do want to eventually talk about Doomsday Cock, right? Because we got to talk about Doomsday Cock. Like, Dr. Manhattan brought out that big cock. And Tom King's run on Batman. So, with that said, this is Andrew saying, peace out for now.